This is What's Next ATL, powered by the Atlanta Regional Commission, where we explore the big new ideas shaping Metro Atlanta. I'm Kate Sweeney. And right now, there's a big idea shaping the country and much of the world. It's teleworking. Okay, so while it's not exactly new, with the COVID-19 pandemic, more of us are working from home, or attempting to, than ever. It seemed like a smart moment to hear from an expert on how to do this teleworking thing right, especially now when obligations like childcare are also eating into many people's days, and since we just don't know when all this will be over. How do we do this right when burnout is a very real risk? I spoke to Roz Tucker, who works with Georgia Commute Options, a program dedicated to reducing the number of single-occupant vehicles on Metro Atlanta's roads. So yeah, all about options like telecommuting. FYI, Georgia Commute Options is also managed by the Atlanta Regional Commission, which powers this podcast. On to the conversation. And to be clear, we are not talking to each other at this moment in the What's Next ATL studio. Where are you?
I am at home teleworking. I am sitting at a desk that I moved into my living room.
Yeah, me too, as are so many of us right now. And that is the subject of our conversation today. So telecommuting has been on the rise as a sort of really nice sort of option to have, not to have to drive into work.
Absolutely, Kate. Over the past 4 years, we've actually seen over a 40% increase in teleworking.
40%?
Yes.
Wow.
In the Atlanta region. And, Forbes has noted Atlanta one of the best places for teleworking.
That makes sense to me.
Yes.
A recent Georgia Commute Options survey revealed that teleworking is outtrending every other mode, from driving to transit to biking, which makes sense. I mean, come on. In largely car-centric Metro Atlanta, a growing number of us would usually rather stay home and work in our jammies. But that's during ideal times, when we have all the equipment we need and can walk down to the local coffee shop mid-morning to grab a latte and see our neighbors. These are not ideal times for many of us. And while we may not all have that ergonomic workspace with the office chair that doesn't kill our back, Roz Tucker says, try to make the most of what you do have.
We understand right now, under these circumstances, some people might have a makeshift workspace. And wherever that might be, if, maybe it's in the kitchen at the table, make that your space. Make sure you have a good chair. You're comfortable. You have good lighting. And you want to make sure that you have surge protectors. Another key point of ergonomics, believe it or not, is that you do take a break from that space throughout the day. Data shows that teleworkers tend to take fewer breaks and work longer days. And so what they really would want to focus on is really keeping office hours, if you will, whatever those hours might be. Now, right now, under these circumstances, you might have some breaks in your day, especially if you have children home and you're having to assist with homeschooling, teleschooling. And, most teleworkers, we tend to work extra hard so that we can keep the privilege of teleworking. But you want to make sure you don't burn yourself out. You could easily burn yourself out.
And this really leads well to another thing I wanted to ask you about, which is being sure to separate your work life from your home life. Another thing that is sort of a real basic of teleworking normally is don't do other things while you're supposed to be working. But things are different for many people now. Some folks a lot of people are homeschooling their kids during this time. So, what suggestions can you give those folks?
So some suggestions that we give, number one, create a routine, right? So things are not the same right now, but as much as you can create a routine where you're getting up at the same time every day and also going to bed at the same time, keep that routine. Don't stay in your bedclothes all day, right? And also communicate with your family when you're teleworking and letting them know if you're on a conference call and saying, I'm going to be out of pocket. We might even recommend you going as far as making a schedule and posting that so that you stick to it, number one, but so that also those in your household would know and understand when you're working on critical things.
Roz, I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about just maintaining our sanity during this time. I mean, not to sound dramatic, but say like yesterday morning, Monday morning, we're recording this on Tuesday, I had a meeting with a group of people, one of those online meetings, and everyone had their little computer cameras turned on. And I just found that it was so nice to see everyone's faces. And I thought, wow, okay, we really are visual creatures. Any other thoughts on just sort of like what to do to not feel so disconnected during this time when we're supposed to be socially isolating?
Kate, that is a great question. We had that conversation on another call this morning during a telework training for managers. And something that we shared with managers was to just be sure they were communicating and creating those touch points for their teleworkers, because you can easily start to feel depressed when you're socially isolated, especially individuals who might live alone. You know, work is really the place where they find that connection and they have that contact. And so it would be so easy during this time to start feeling isolated. And you want to make sure as a teleworker that you create those touch points with your colleagues. Reach out to them, and, you know, you could start a challenge. And I know some teleworkers are challenging in the mornings where they're doing a walk during their commute time, or they're all at lunchtime. They're getting out and walking. But if you need that additional touch point, reach out.
Yeah. I'm also finding that it's really useful. Any reminders that I get that we're all in the same boat right now. Like, I was talking with my boss this morning, and she was talking about homeschooling her kid, which is something that I was doing this morning. And the fact that we love our kids, but we're not educators.
Yes.
You know, I was sitting there with my child this morning with like a big pile of pennies, trying to explain to him that 10 pennies is the same thing as a dime. And he was so bored. And he just kept saying, I want to play with my trains. I want to play with my trains. And I thought, how does his pre-K teacher do this every day?
We all have to be a lot more understanding and forgiving during this time. And it's just not the normal circumstances. And also, what's going to help that is just having really great communication. And I think that creates just a greater sense of comfort. This is a really good time to rethink, you know, how we're supporting each other. And believe it or not, a lot of the support that I'm finding currently is through technology.
Hear, hear. Whether it's a teaching resource for kids or a streaming exercise routine like my gym is doing, the internet is keeping many of us sane during these days of social distancing. And while these times are undoubtedly challenging, Roz Tucker also sees this as sort of the ultimate opportunity to showcase teleworking as a really strong option here in Metro Atlanta. Okay, that's my conversation. And I'm going to leave you with some tips that she left for us. Well, actually, she came to the interview armed with 2 sets of tips, one for teleworkers and one for managers. We'll post both up on the website. But here are some highlights. We'll do the managers first. 1. Communication matters. Develop strong procedures for communication and access so that your employees know when you're available. Communicate with your employees just like you would in the office, not less because they're not around, and not more. 2. Consider productivity. Manage by measuring results. If there are problems with productivity, problem solve with your employees in order to build trust, and provide feedback in a timely manner. And finally, 3. Don't expect perfection during this stressful time. For employees, 1. Stay in touch. Make sure your team members and supervisors have a clear idea of the days and times you will be working. Keep your boss and team members informed of where you stand on different projects and respond to texts, calls, and emails. 2. Develop a routine. As much as possible, treat your telework day like a regular day in the office. Change out of what you sleep in when you sit down to work, even though I know you really wanted to show off those Spider-Man jammies to all your coworkers during that conference call. 3. Pay attention to your ergonomics. As much as possible, consider things like desk and chair height, lighting, and electrical support. And take breaks during the day, just as you would at the office. Which brings us to number 4. Do what you need to do to take care of your mental health. Don't overwork. call your coworkers just to say hi about when you'd normally grab coffee with them at the office. Consider new high-tech ways to stay in touch. Consider maybe one Slack channel for work and another for fun conversations. You might even formalize this fun, as Roz suggests, by starting something like an exercise or trivia challenge with team members. If you feel overwhelmed by something like your parenting duties, work with your team to develop a plan. After all, we don't know how long this will last, so do what you need to do to maintain your health for however long it takes. Wow, gotta say it felt really nice to have a list that did not involve wash your hands. But go ahead and do that too. Hey, and if you find yourself in the working at home club these days, we want to know how it's going. Share your best teleworking photos on Twitter, making sure to tag us at Atlanta Regional with the hashtag teleworkinginATL. And tell us what the secret to your success is. Is it your cats, your afternoon snack, your impromptu dance parties? We want to know. Again, that's on Twitter at Atlanta Regional, hashtag teleworkinginATL. Our website is whatsnextatl.org/podcast. We'll have another episode at you soon. If you're enjoying What's Next ATL, please share us with friends and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, ATLians, here's the sound from my home office. No one's singing from their balconies today. Well, see ya.